April 27, 1909. Under the cover of darkness, the royal palace is surrounded by the empire's own soldiers. They have come to deliver a final ultimatum to the man who ruled for 33 years. Step down from the throne or face the consequences. This is Sultan Abdul Hamid II. To the west, he was the Red Sultan, a butcher and a dictator. To millions of Muslims, he was the Caliph, their final guardian in an age of colonial expansion. Today, we look at the evidence to decide his place in history. Abdul Hamid did not inherit a functioning state. He stepped into a role often called a crown of thorns, presiding over the sick man of Europe. By 1876, the Ottoman Empire was suffering from 3 specific fatal diseases. Disease 1 was bankruptcy. The national treasury was empty, forcing the empire to surrender its economic sovereignty. A foreign commission, controlled by clerks in London and Paris, now managed Ottoman taxes and customs to ensure international debts were paid first. Disease 2 was internal fracture. Nationalism, fueled by the ideals of the French Revolution and weaponized by Russia, was tearing the Balkans apart. Revolts in Greece, Serbia, and Bulgaria threatened to shrink the empire's borders to the gates of the capital. Disease 3 was the throne itself. Just months before Abdul Hamid's ascension, his uncle, Sultan Abdul Aziz, was deposed by ambitious ministers like Midhat Pasha. Days later, he was found dead with his wrists cut. Abdul Hamid's brother then took the throne, only to be declared insane after 93 days. The conspirators placed 34-year-old Prince Abdul Hamid on the throne under one condition: he must implement a constitution. They expected a compliant figurehead who would serve their interests while they ran the government. Instead, the new sultan took charge of a dying empire, economically enslaved and physically fracturing. The stage was set for a reign defined not by reform, but by the cold mechanics of survival. The first disaster struck almost immediately. Russia declared war, and while Abdul Hamid expected the West to intervene as they had in the past, he found the empire completely isolated. Russian armies marched until they were visible from the windows of Istanbul. The resulting Treaty of San Stefano was a humiliation. The empire lost 1/3 of its European territory. Serbia, Romania, and Montenegro gained independence, while Britain and Austria-Hungary moved in to seize their own shares of the Ottoman remains. This defeat transformed Abdul Hamid into a realist. He abandoned any hope of Western friendship and realized that if the empire were to survive, it had to be strengthened from within, using the conflicting interests of his enemies as a shield. He spent the next 30 years playing a geopolitical game of divide and survive. He manipulated the colonial greed of Britain, France, and Russia, ensuring that any move one made against the Ottomans would be blocked by the others to maintain the balance of power. His most strategic move was partnering with Germany. As a new industrial power with no history of Middle Eastern colonization, Germany provided the military modernization and infrastructure the Sultan needed. Projects like the Berlin-Baghdad Railway brought German expertise directly into Ottoman territory. By turning European wolves against each other, the Sultan achieved what seemed impossible. He halted the external collapse of the state for 3 decades without engaging in a single major conflict. To unify the diverse Arab, Kurdish, and Turkish populations within his borders, Abdul Hamid reached for his most powerful title, Caliph of the Muslims. This title acted as a deterrent against the colonial powers.
Millions of Muslims lived under British rule in India, French rule in Africa, and Russian rule in Central Asia. The threat of the Caliph calling for a global jihad was a spiritual weapon that forced the West to tread carefully. This unity took physical form in the Hejaz Railway. Built entirely with donations from Muslims across the globe, it connected Istanbul to the holy city of Medina, serving as a monument to the collective strength of the Ummah. Domestically, the Sultan's policy was far less inclusive. Believing that a dying empire could not survive the chaos of democracy, he suspended the parliament and centralized all authority within the palace. This centralization led to the ruthless suppression of internal revolts. Following an assassination attempt against him in 1905, the Sultan's response to Armenian rebels was so bloody that the Western press permanently branded him a butcher and the Red Sultan. Amidst these internal crises, a new movement emerged from Europe. Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, sought to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, which was then a province of the Ottoman Empire. Herzl offered the Sultan a deal that would have solved his greatest problem. The Zionist movement would pay off the empire's entire national debt in exchange for Jewish settlement in Palestine. Abdul Hamid refused. He declared that Palestine was a trust of the Muslim people, and that he would never sell a single inch of the land that contained Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa. He told Herzl that the land belonged to the nation, not the king. While he functioned as a ruthless autocrat at home, this refusal suggested a hierarchy of loyalty. When the survival of his treasury was weighed against the sanctity of the Holy Land, he chose the latter. The Sultan's ultimate challenge came from the very people he had educated. The young officers he sent to Europe to study modern science instead returned with revolutionary ideals of liberty and secular nationalism. These young Turks came to view the Sultan's Islamic ideology and absolute control as the primary obstacles to progress. They believed the only way to save the empire was to remove the man who held it together. In 1908, a military rebellion in Macedonia forced the Sultan's hand. To prevent a civil war, he was compelled to restore the constitution and the parliament, effectively ending his 30 years of absolute rule. The final move came in 1909. Following a conservative counter-rebellion in Istanbul, the young Turks blamed the Sultan for the unrest. They marched on the palace, obtained a religious fatwa under duress, and officially deposed him. The Sultan's strategy had reached its end. The centralized control he used to guard the empire against foreign powers had created a state of internal suffocation, turning his protective fortress into a prison. As he was removed from power, the Sultan issued a warning to the new government. "I have run this empire for 33 years. You will not be able to run it for 33 days." His prediction was nearly accurate. Within years, the new government lost Libya to Italy and almost all remaining European land in the Balkan Wars. Finally, they plunged the empire into the catastrophic destruction of World War I. By 1918, the empire was gone. British forces occupied Jerusalem and Baghdad. The very land of Palestine that Abdul Hamid had refused to sell for billions of dollars was taken by the British for free. The collapse of the Ottoman state serves as a reminder that internal divisions can be more destructive than external enemies. Was Abdul Hamid a villain for his ruthless methods, or a hero for delaying a total collapse? The decision is yours.